Good morning. My name is Anna Lebesch, and I am the Senior Vice President for Workforce Development and Talent Development at JAXUSA Partnership. Welcome to our Financial Services Workforce Briefing. It is my pleasure today to welcome as our virtual host, Chris Oakley of the Federal Reserve. Chris is the Vice President and Coordinating Regional Executive of the bank's Regional Economic Information Network. In this role, he serves as the lead regional executive, assuming responsibility for coordinating strategic plan, outputs, and talent pipeline for the 6th District. He's responsible for the Jacksonville Board of Directors and the district's advisory board on trade and transportation, and provides regional input into Atlanta Fed's monetary policy process. So to launch us today, Chris is going to be sharing with us information on the Federal Reserve. Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Anna. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. The Fed is honored to serve as the virtual host. So we want to thank the chamber and all the staff for thinking of us. I'm going to just give you a quick overview of the Federal Reserve, with the hope being that for some of you, this will be a reminder of things that you may have learned about the nation's central bank. For others, some of this may be new, but part of what I wanted to do is also get everyone thinking about the different types of roles that our employees play in our organization. So Anna is going to be running the deck for me. So with that, Anna, we can go on to the next slide. And I'm starting really at a very broad level. The Fed is a 100-plus-year-old organization. We were actually created back in 1913 by the Federal Reserve Act, and of course have evolved over all of these years. But today we have three primary responsibilities. The first of those being supervision, regulation, and credit. We are one of the three primary bank regulators in the U.S. We also have a financial services component, and I'm going to touch on that a little bit when I tell you a bit more about the Jacksonville branch. And then what most people are familiar with when they think of the Fed is monetary policy. This is the policy-making part of our responsibilities that primarily involves the movement of interest rates. So we can go to the next slide, and you can get a sense for how we are structured. We're an interesting organization in that we were created by the government, and we were created to have some governmental elements, but we were also created to operate independently of political influence. And so as you look at the slide there, you see a photo of one of the Board of Governors facilities in Washington, D.C. That is the part of the bank that is more governmental in nature. Over to the right, that's a photo of the Atlanta Fed on Peachtree Street, one of 12 reserve banks that are around the U.S. that function a bit more like private sector entities. Each of those organizations has its own board of directors, for example. And then the leaders of these two organizations come together to form the Federal Open Market Committee, which is the policy-making body for the Federal Reserve. And on the next slide, I'm going to drill down a bit more so you can get a sense for who some of these leaders are. This is a photo of the current members of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. As you can see, there are 7 positions. Currently, 3 of those are vacant, but they are, a subset of those vacancies are pending appointees. And so let me back up and just draw your attention to Jerome Powell up in the upper left-hand corner. He is the chair, currently the chair pro tem of the Federal Reserve. All of these folks are presidential appointees. So in other words, they're nominated by the President of the United States, but ultimately approved for service by the Senate. And so Jay Powell is actually awaiting confirmation of his second term as chair, and 2 of those vacancies are actually awaiting Senate confirmation. If we go to the next slide, you can get a picture of the other part of the Fed, which again are the 12 reserve banks. So I'll draw your attention to the map in the center. You can see the 12 different reserve bank territories in the U.S. And in case you're wondering why there's a concentration of banks on the eastern side of the U.S., I think that speaks to where the centers of commerce were back in 1913 when the Federal Reserve was created. Each of these reserve banks is led by a president, and that's where you see the 12 photos that are showing up there. And so you can get a sense of the different leaders around the bank. And again, along with the governors that I just introduced you to, that collection of folks make up the policymaking body. Drilling down a bit further into the Atlanta Fed, which is where I work, we are part of the 6th Federal Reserve District. As you can see, Atlanta is our headquarters, but we have a significant number of branches. Of course, I'm talking to you from the Jacksonville branch. We also have another Florida branch being in Miami. There's a branch in New Orleans, and Birmingham, and Nashville. And as you can see, we've got a large geographic territory with all of Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, Eastern Tennessee, and Southern Mississippi, and Louisiana. And this entire organization is led by our president, Raphael Bostic, who again is one of those 12 Reserve Bank presidents I introduced you to and is a member of the Federal Open Market Committee. Go to the next slide. There we go. Also locally, I wanted to introduce you to some folks from the private sector that are engaged with our branch. So I referenced the fact that each of the banks has its own board of directors. The branches has a board as well. And these folks serve primarily as experts in their fields. These are individuals who are knowledgeable of what's going on economically in the various geographies that they represent. And they come together to provide us with economic intelligence that we use to help inform our views on monetary policy. And again, because I'm talking primarily to a Jacksonville audience, I'll just point out that 4 of the 7 actually are from the Jacksonville area. That would include Paul Boynton, who's affiliated with Rainier Advanced Materials, Tim Cost, who, like many on the call, is an educator. He is the president of Jacksonville University. Lisa Palmer is the president and CEO of Regency Centers, which is a national organization that is headquartered here. And then finally, Brian Wolfberg is the president and CEO of iStar Credit Union, which is headquartered here. And then we have directors that represent other parts of our territory, which I will mention includes all of Central Florida and well out into the Panhandle as well. So moving on, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the role that I play. So if we can go to the next slide, and I'll talk a little bit about the Regional Economic Information Network. And actually, we can move forward 2 slides. I want to point out the way this process works. And this is actually one of the types of jobs that is in the Jacksonville branch. So as you were thinking about the types of workforce and education that can contribute to folks that could be considered for employment, the role that I play and my team here in Jacksonville is very much focused on gathering economic intelligence. So having some type of an economics background or having an economics education would be really helpful. We do a lot of analysis, so the ability to analyze data and to take on board qualitative information. And I would also reference just the ability to be agile, to be nimble in these positions, because they of course evolve. And I can see we're having a little bit of issues with the way the slides are showing up, but I can still walk through this very quickly with everybody to give you an understanding of how we gather information via the Regional Economic Information Network. So we start at the top there, you see where it says public. That is in effect where we are going out. And in addition to those directors I introduced you to, we're also gathering information from contacts that we've made in large businesses, small businesses, academia, governmental entities, nonprofits, all the different players that represent different parts of the Main Street economy. We share that information with our branch boards and with our colleagues across the district. That includes our 6th district research team, which is comprised of PhD economists and analysts. The Atlanta Board of Directors, in effect, serves as the cream of the crop in terms of gathering this economic intelligence. And all of this informs President Bostic's thinking on policy. He takes that information as well as all the work that our economists have done in analyzing the data and puts it together to formulate his views on policy, which he provides to the Federal Open Market Committee. Policy is made, which, as I referenced earlier, could include changes to interest rate policy. So, for example, the committee recently increased the federal funds rate by 25 basis points, and that impacts all of us as members of the public, and then the process begins again. This is very much a simplified approach to how this works, but it gives you a sense of how the process unfolds in real time. And I've got a colleague that's on the call who I think is going to put a link to a video that we've created that explains this process in a bit more detail. We're going to include those links in the chat. And so we can move on to the next slide. And I'm going to drill down a bit further to the Jacksonville branch. So this is a picture of our facility. We are on Water Street, just adjacent to the Prime Osborne Convention Center. And while we've got a number of different operations that take place in our building, I was going to touch on just a couple of those. We can go to the next slide and talk a little bit about the cash services department. So this is one of the central bank responsibilities of the Federal Reserve, and that is to provide for new currency and coin into the broad economy. And so we serve as a distribution point for the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, as well as the U.S. Mint, in getting new currency and coin out into the economy. And of course, we do this through the financial system by holding currency and coin on behalf of financial institutions. And as they need to make withdrawals from their own accounts, they come to the Federal Reserve. And just like a bank would do for an individual, we will take in both deposits of excess currency and coin from financial institutions, as well as facilitate withdrawals when they need to restock their own vaults to be sure that they're able to provide adequate currency and coin volumes to the general public. As you can see there, the Jacksonville branch is one of 4 of the branches in our 6 district location that provides these services. And then across the system, there are a total of 28 other cash processing facilities. The types of backgrounds that typically are beneficial to this type of work would include typically some type of financial background, meaning oftentimes employees here will have previous teller experience or perhaps have worked in a vault of a financial institution, a bank, a credit union, that type of thing. Obviously, math skills are really important for this type of work because at the end of the day, we do balance to the penny. We are very aware of the fact that we are holding these funds on behalf of the U.S. public. And so obviously integrity is another element of this that is critically important. And then another operation that I wanted to share is law enforcement. So we do have our own law enforcement staff, and these are individuals whose work is not contracted out like you might see in some commercial financial institutions. And they actually have very significant responsibilities. And so the folks that come on board that work in our law enforcement area typically have come with either a police background or a military background. And in addition to all of the things that you would expect, which would include, of course, weapons handling skills, it's a very high-tech job because a lot of the security within Federal Reserve banks is actually very much technology driven. And so these folks have an interesting collection of skill sets that make them successful in these types of roles. And then finally, I wanted to share on the next slide an overview both of another type of job here, but also make sure that the educators that are on the call are aware of the fact that we have a financial education outreach effort. And so we have staff around our district that are involved with this. These historically have been teachers or people who have training facilitation in their background that are also very knowledgeable of both financial education as well as education related to the Federal Reserve, to the role that central banks play in the functioning of a well-run economy. And like I said, importantly, we wanted to make you aware that there are resources that are available to educators and really to the general public. But again, I'm talking to educators. These are materials that are free of charge to you. And I think we are going to also put in the chat a link there that will allow you to see the types of materials that are available, as well as how to access those. And then finally, I'll give you one more collection of resources, another couple of web addresses there. If you're interested in learning more about the economy and the type of research that our staff is involved with, you would go to atlantafed.org/research. And then we also have a website called Economy Matters, which is a bit focused more toward the general public. And that's atlantafed.org/economy-matters. And then finally, if you are optimized to use your phone, if that's where you get all of your information, we actually have an app. You can go to your favorite app store and just search for Economy Now, and you'll be able to pull up the Atlanta Fed's app, which provides you with access to a number of different types of work that the Fed does, particularly the Atlanta Fed and various tools that we have created and made available for your use. So with that, we will wrap it up, and I will just turn it over to Anna to see if there are any questions that anyone has.
Well, Chris, thank you. That was a wonderful perspective on everything the Federal Reserve does and is about. I know one question that I have is, I've had the fortune of visiting your facility here in Jacksonville. And I know you haven't been able to have visitors of late, but is that something that will be an option to educators in the future to bring people back to the Federal Reserve? Because it's a really neat experience to go there.
Yeah, Anna, thank you for that. And like I'm sure many of the organizations that folks on the call have either worked with or perhaps are personally working with, we have been shut down to visitors during the course of the pandemic, but we are making our way out of that posture. And so, Anna, we're hoping that in May we will resume having access to guests. And again, if you go to the Atlanta Fed website, you can search for information about our financial education initiative, which is where educators tend to connect with us. And we are happy to begin resuming some of that activity, because like you said, these types of train the trainer types of initiatives tend to work best in person. And to your point, showing a couple of pictures on a presentation like this is not the same as actually being able to tour the facility and to see the work that's being done firsthand. And so definitely we're looking forward to getting folks back in. And again, I would use our website as the best resource in order to make your interest known.
Great. Well, thank you, Chris. We really appreciate you being with us today and being our virtual host for our financial services briefing. And I'd like to share a little bit of a perspective with you on the financial services industry here in the region. The financial services sector in Northeast Florida continues to grow steadily and attract companies interested in financial services support, investment banking, mortgage sales, and fintech. Jacksonville is a consistently competitive region and offers jobs at entry, mid, and executive levels. The Jacksonville region has a reputation as a global player and a destination for financial services industries. In fact, 20 major banks, insurance, and investment firms on the Forbes Global 500 list have operations in the region, with a significant presence of jobs in cybersecurity, software development, data analytics, banking, payment innovation, as well as traditional back office functions in insurance and investment banking and front office services. Due to this thriving environment for financial services, coupled with the demands for technology-driven platforms and services in this modern-day field, Jacksonville is also naturally shifting to fintech operations as well. In fact, here in our region, there are over 2,400 finance and insurance establishments, creating a robust environment for talent to thrive. This growth continues as well, with the announcements over the last 3 years to include fintech companies such as FIS, SoFi, SS&C, and Nimbus, with operations that are going to total over 1,300 new jobs, as well as the headquarters relocation of Dun and Bradstreet, bringing 500 new jobs to the region. Other announcements, though smaller in size, are just as valuable, such as Cantor Fitzgerald, an international finance services firm, adding 80 new jobs, and NewRez, a mortgage finance company with 100 jobs. So as you look at this information, according to Jobs EQ, the 2022 data, the finance and insurance sector has over 53,000 regional jobs with an average wage of over $90,000. There's nearly a 4% positive annual change in employment in the last 10 years in this financial services sector. So as you can see, there are a multitude of job roles to be found in this industry, from customer service operations, tech positions, to supervisors and managers. The opportunities are many. The top 5 careers are customer service representative, financial services sales agents, tellers, insurance agents, and personal advisors. But when you look at the top job openings, you will see that over the last 12 months, there were over 15,000 job postings in finance, representing 364 different occupations. Here are the top 5 job openings for our region: financial services sales agents, accountants and auditors, financial managers and analysts, computer information managers, and bookkeeping and information accounting clerks. There are opportunities at all levels of education, with almost 20% of the jobs requiring a high school diploma or equivalent, 47% requiring an associate or bachelor's degree, and then less than 2% require a master's or higher. So certainly there's an opportunity to start, grow, and develop your career in this industry right here in our region. As you look at financial services, everything is on a positive trajectory. You see increased job growth and increased wage growth for our region, which demonstrates that this is a valuable industry to our region and certainly a great opportunity for our current and future talent.